YouTube, once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football, go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Of course, a lot of always to unpack, especially when you have a brand new head coach coming to Auburn from the Mountain West Conference, Boise State, that has had a relative level of success, and translating that to Power 5 football is, can be a little bit of level of difficulties. Now, one thing I can say about Bryan Harsin is the fact that he's readily accepted the challenge from what I can gather. I think, I did a podcast with All About Auburn, Devin Dawson. Well, we talked about that, Bryan Harsin has voluntarily thrown himself into the lion's den. He could have easily rested in the confines of the Mountain West Conference, where a 50 rated recruiting class could have you on a respectable level every year, to where you'll probably win your conference. You'll probably even sneak into New Year's Six Bowl if things roll right. You beat the right teams during the year. But Bryan Harsin is coming to really, a gauntlet, to be fair. The SEC conference continually upgrades as far as coaching, continually upgrades as far as recruiting standards. And Bryan Harsin said, look, I want to be in the mix. I want to come here. I want to have the best coaching staff. I want to have access to some of the best players. And I'm up for the challenge. But we gonna see, though, because the expectation level at Auburn, especially considering for the last 11 years, you have a college football team that has made 2 appearances in the national championship, winning it in 2010. We're seconds away from winning it in 2013. You also have a college football team that also made appearances in the SEC championship, made appearances in New Year's Six Bowls under Gus Malzahn, the Sugar Bowl, and also the Peach Bowl. Even though losing both, the guys were there. You also have a previous regime that actually had respectable recruiting classes. Bryan Harsin has some big shoes to fill, not necessarily filling the shoes of Gus Malzahn, Gene Chizik, or Tommy Tuberville, but he has big shoes to fill on his own right. Because this thing is transitioning to the point where you can have a 19th ranked recruiting class, but still be ranked number 7 in your own conference. And that says a lot. And that says a lot about how far behind potentially walking into Auburn Bryan Harsin is. Arkansas, Sam Pittman, they're doing some good things there. LSU's Ed Orgeron won the national championship, had a down year the next year, but the ball has not stopped rolling when it comes to a recruiting standpoint. Georgia, we know where they are. They recruit some of the best players in the country. And you put that team against anybody, they have the potential to beat them. Alabama, that speaks for itself. Florida is starting to emerge, has kind of kicked their foot in the door as a perennial power in the SEC East. I don't think Georgia took advantage of the downtime of the SEC East. But, it is what it is. This is a brutal thing that Bryan Harsin is getting into. The announcement is coming today. Tony Fair, defensive lineman from UAB, who everyone thought was going to Nebraska, decided to come to UAB. Not sure why even he wants to leave UAB after a pretty stellar season. Maybe he wants to put himself on the forefront to market himself as a really good prospect in the NFL draft. What does that mean, though? Let's just say he commits to Auburn. He's got a couple of guys in front of him. He got Tyrone Truesdale. He's got Lee Hunter that he's going to have to compete against, and I think he knows that. It's going to be really interesting to see what decision he makes today at 2 p.m. Now let's segue back to Bryan Harsin. Bryan Harsin has come on. He has the rhetoric for a Power 5 football coach. He talks the talk. He's aggressive in his approach to recruiting, and he understands. It doesn't matter how excellent of a coach you are. If you're going to win in this conference, you better figure out a way to out-recruit your competition. Everybody in the SEC West, from a coach's standpoint, has so far, they haven't out-recruited him at all because he's just getting here. But he's walking into a situation where, yeah, I talked about before, where Auburn has an overlap in talent, but some of that has depleted itself now. DJ Williams, gone. Mark Anthony Richards, gone. Big Cat Bryant left for the transfer portal. Cornish Miller, gone. Harold Joyner, gone. You have a very shallow running back room. Hopefully with the transfer portal, Auburn will be able to tighten that up. I was looking at some footage from the A-Day game. The offensive tackle for Auburn is still an adverse position. Getting beat off the line by the second team at certain points. Bryan Harsin's got a lot of work to do. And I think he understands the talk is done. The feel-good speeches are done. And now it's time for the work to begin. And I think he knows that in order for there to be success under his tenure, he has to make some really, really good decisions. Now, I will say so far he's made some pretty decent decisions from a coaching standpoint. I think he's got the staff in place. A lot of folks talk, interestingly about Mike Bobo and his tenure at Georgia. He has a former head coach as his offensive coordinator. On a defensive side, he has Derek Mason, who is a very respectable entity of the coaching business in college football. Had some great things going on at Stanford. Had some really nice things going in the early portion of his career at Vanderbilt, but just wasn't able to sustain. But that knowledge, and because you got to talk about the real estate between the ears. His brain, his coaching brain is still there. And now he has access to the talent to potentially make this thing happen. But yes, sir, Bryan Harsin is right in the lion's teeth. He's not in the den. He's in the teeth of the lion by coming into the SEC and the Deep South as far as college football goes. How he's responded well so far. He's made some tough decisions so far. Literally cleaning house of the previous coaching staff because he probably looked at it and said, you know what? These are not bad guys, but for where I see this program headed, there's no way that I'm going to reach my level of success with this coaching staff. I mean, he had some proven guys. He had Rodney Garner. It would have been an easy guy to keep. Kevin Steele would have been a relatively easy guy to keep, especially with Kevin Steele in the twilight portion of his career still being engaged. I think that 3-1-7 defense that he came together with personnel packages and all said a lot about how engaged he still is with the business. But Bryan Harsin comes in and said, nope, this is not what I want. I want my guys. I want the guys that I know will help put me in position to be successful in this industry. A lot of chatter going on around Auburn. Everything was great. Bryan Harsin on boards gives the great pressure to begin his career. But now reality is really starting to set in for where Auburn is headed. And I think that has left the Auburn fan base right now in a little state of discord because they don't know now. All these players are leaving. Your rivals are continuing to emerge in the recruiting ranks. I think Tony Fair's decision is going to play a huge role as to where Auburn sits in the market as far as Bryan Harsin goes. I think, when I look at this with Tony Fair, I think this might be one of the bigger decisions from a recruit in his era at Auburn. I think this is a recruit that Auburn really needs to land. But either way, I think Bryan Harsin understands what he's getting into. He willingly accepted the challenge. First year, I don't know. I really don't know where, and I think that's where the fan base and anyone who supports Auburn has to understand that this thing ain't as pretty as you think it is. You know, this is not a cut and dry situation. You got to deal with mentalities of the players. You got to deal with behaviors. You got to deal with, you know, how am I going to, from a culture standpoint, reel these guys in to where we can have a successful season. Now, luckily, Auburn can extend fall camp with the first 2 games of the season with Akron and Alabama State. A relatively manageable spotlight game with Penn State, but then after that, it's on, guys. Will Bryan Harsin meet the challenge? And will Bryan Harsin have the type of sustainable success in year 1 that will give the fan base, that will give those that support Auburn the reassurance that moving forward, he's the right guy? Let me know what you think in the comment section. I really appreciate all of these subscribers, the new subscribers, the old subscribers, even some guys that come to visit. Danny Blackman from Georgia. I want to really give a shout out to you, GA Champion, who is actually an Auburn fan. He's not a Georgia fan. Want to also give a shout out to anyone that I'm not naming. My number 1 subscriber, my first subscriber, Andre Ivy, who happens to be an Alabama fan. My brother Kirsten, who was one of my first subscribers as well. All the guys at All About Auburn, Scotty Boyd, Tyler, Devin Dawson, and also my brothers at War Report. Go ahead and like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.